Is the United States really a capitalist country? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. We've all heard of the American dream. It's the land of the free. Since its independence in 1776, the United States has been the greatest advocate of the free market worldwide. Some even consider it an integral part of their identity, almost as important as the flag itself. But what if I told you that you've been misled all this time? What if I told you that the United States is far from being a prime example of capitalism? Of course, you wouldn't believe me. But pay attention to the following news. Biden's budget of $7.3 trillion for 2025 plans to increase taxes on the wealthy and corporations to fund Social Security and Medicare. The U.S. is spending more and more money on social programs, increasing taxes, and progressively moving away from liberal capitalism. You might be thinking, well, obviously that's what happens when Joe Biden is left-leaning and is practically turning the country into a Bolshevik dictatorship. But I'm sorry, that's not the case. In fact, it's not just a Democratic thing. Uncle Sam's government spending has been continuously growing over the past centuries, from 2.35% of GDP in 1800 to a staggering 36.26% in 2022. In other words, the government of the supposedly most capitalist country in the world has multiplied the weight of the state by 15 times. It's now 100% larger than it was 200 years ago. So, how did this happen? How did the original vision of the Founding Fathers, which aimed for limited government and low taxes, change over time? The answer lies in a name and a birth date, the 16th Amendment of 1913. This amendment allowed the government to tax any form of income, marking the introduction of income tax and exponential growth in public spending. Simultaneously, various regulations were introduced in the labor market, such as the first Social Security and minimum wage laws, measures that the current President Joe Biden greatly admires. With all this in mind, it might seem that the famous Wild West capitalism of the Yankee Empire is more of a historical legend than a current reality. But hold on, let's not rush. After all, most countries in the world also have high taxes and labor regulations. So, is the United States still the bastion of the free market that we know, or has American capitalism come to an end? To determine if the United States is still a capitalist country, we need to define capitalism precisely. As varied as opinions may be on the definition of capitalism, let's distill it down to two core principles: taxes and legal equity. In a capitalist framework, taxation should be kept to a minimum and non-intrusive, fostering an environment where individuals and businesses can thrive without excessive financial burden. Moreover, legal equality is paramount, ensuring that the government neither shows favoritism nor imposes penalties on specific entities or individuals. This principle upholds a level playing field where success is determined by merit and innovation rather than government intervention or arbitrary advantage. By adhering to these fundamental tenets, a capitalist system can foster innovation, competition, and economic growth while safeguarding individual liberties and promoting fairness within society. Now, let's talk about taxes in the United States. The U.S. tax system is one of the most unique cases globally, based not on residency, but on citizenship. This means that every U.S. citizen, even if living or working abroad, is obligated to pay taxes to Uncle Sam. With nearly 3 million adult citizens living overseas, the government's incentives to pursue tax evasion are significant. In fact, many Americans abroad are willing to renounce their citizenship due to the burdensome and bureaucratic tax system. But how does the U.S. government enforce taxes on its citizens worldwide? Enter the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, FATCA, introduced during Barack Obama's presidency in 2013. FATCA requires all foreign financial institutions to identify American citizens among their clients and report their assets to the U.S. government. Failure to comply results in severe penalties, effectively putting the international banking sector under Uncle Sam's control. Now, let's talk numbers. If we look at the overall tax burden compared to national income, the United States has a tax burden of around 30%, while European countries exceed 40% and even approach 50%. So in that sense, the United States would be more capitalist than old Europe. However, Compared to countries like Ireland, Hong Kong, or Singapore, the U.S. tax burden is significantly higher. When we delve into the realm of government spending, it becomes apparent that the United States is quite distant from being a low-tax utopia. Its practices in wealth redistribution and the enforcement of tax collection don't quite align with traditional capitalist principles. Furthermore, the influence of money in politics presents a substantial hurdle to legal equality and justice. While theoretically, U.S. courts oversee politicians, the pervasive impact of money in politics often skews decisions in favor of specific companies, thanks to extensive lobbying efforts. This dynamic underscores a significant deviation from the ideal of a fair and impartial legal system. Thus, despite its capitalist foundations, the United States grapples with systemic challenges that question its adherence to the core tenets of capitalism, particularly in the realms of taxation, wealth redistribution, and political influence. Is the United States still as capitalist as many claim? While its tax burden is not exceptionally high, it falls short of being a liberal paradise. The levels of wealth redistribution and the pursuit of tax-paying citizens deviate from pure capitalism. Additionally, the influence of money on politics undermines legal equality and justice. The U.S. appears to be moving towards a more interventionist form of capitalism, but it has yet to reach the level of state control seen in countries like China. However, it's evident that the American economic model is evolving, and its future trajectory remains uncertain. In conclusion, while the United States may have started as a beacon of capitalism, its current trajectory suggests a departure from its original principles. Whether it remains a capitalist country or not is open to interpretation, but one thing is clear. The landscape of American capitalism is evolving, and its future remains uncertain.